The Cherry Blossom Murders. Episode 4, Mystery at the Kyoto Temple. An original sleep story narrated in the author's own voice. Welcome back. Tonight. The story returns once more to Japan in the late 1990s. To the quiet rhythm of the railway line, to the soft blur of spring countryside beyond the train window, to cherry trees opening their pale flowers beside the tracks, to Kyoto, with its old lanes, red temple gates, mountain paths, and shrines half hidden in the trees. This is the Cherry Blossom Murders, an original sleep story about love, mystery, and self-growth in 1990s Japan, narrated in the author's own voice. Before the story begins, please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the series. There are more mysteries to come, and if you have any thoughts, questions, theories, or favourite moments, please leave them in the comments. I love reading your comments, and I love interacting with listeners as the story unfolds. In the last episode, Will remained at the cherry blossoms after the discovery behind the beaded curtain. The police came at last, though not quite in the manner Will had expected. Statements were taken, drinks were poured, and the investigation seemed to drift dangerously close to becoming a karaoke evening. A handsome young police officer drove Kim and Will through the rain. He was kind to Will, or at least kinder than the others, but he also told Will something he had not been prepared to hear. Will was a suspect, the only suspect. His fingerprints had been found in the room. His shoes had been taken as evidence, and the statement he had signed, written in Japanese, had already become part of a story he could no longer control. Then the officer gave him a delicate handmade invitation. Dance show at 10, floor show at 11, freak show at 12. Kim tore it up almost at once. He said they had to get away from the bar, away from the police, away from Tokyo itself. And so, before the rain had even stopped falling, Will agreed to go with Kim to Kyoto. Tonight, the city changes. The neon of Shinjuku gives way to mountain air. The mirrored basement bar gives way to temple paths. And at the temple, beneath the cherry trees, and something waits. But for now, settle comfortably. Let your body grow heavy. Let your breathing slow. Let the world outside soften and fall away. And imagine the gentle movement of a train, carrying Will and Kim south, through spring rain, towards Kyoto. Flowering cherry trees appeared as we sped south. At first there were only a few, small pale clouds beside the railway line. Then more appeared, and then more, until it seemed the whole landscape was beginning to open, pink and white and full of life. The trees rushed towards the train and passed away again, as if someone were unfolding a painted fan across the window. I watched them for a long time. I tried to think of them only as flowers, only as spring, only as proof that the world had not stopped because a tragic boy in a basement bar had died. But the thought would not hold. It seemed awful that Ming, the murdered cherry blossom boy, had not seen the spring. People should die only in winter, I thought. After summer, after warmth, after everything and everyone have had their chance. The train moved smoothly on. A faint vibration travelled through the carriage floor. Beside me, Kim flicked through a glossy American men's magazine with the restless energy of someone pretending to relax. His hair was perfect. His clothes were perfect. He looked entirely himself, which made me feel worse, because after what had happened at the cherry blossoms, I was not sure anyone should look entirely themselves. I had slept badly at his apartment. All night I had listened to the rain and thought of the young policeman, the card and the torn invitation, the word suspect, and Kim lying in the bed next to my futon, breathing softly in the red glow of the lamp. Now, on the bullet train, the night before seemed both very close and very far away, as if it had happened to someone I knew intimately, but not quite to me. Kim turned a page. Then he stopped. "What would you want your mum to know?" he asked. "If it, it happened to you." His tone was lighter than the question deserved, but only just. I turned away from the cherry blossoms and looked at him. "What do you mean?" I asked. "If you died, doll," he said quietly. He gave a little shrug. "As we all do, I suppose, eventually." I did not like the phrase, "as we all do," as if death were an awkward appointment or an unavoidable admin task. "I don't know," I said. The answer felt too small, too English, too hopelessly polite. After a moment, I added, "Only that I was always cheerful and spoke of her often." Then I stopped, because I was not sure that would really help anyone. Not my mother, not me, not whatever poor soul had to write it down. Kim watched me for a moment. "That's sweet, doll," he said. "I really like your attitude." "Oh," I said. Do I have an attitude? I wondered aloud in surprise. I might have laughed. Instead, I merely smiled. Kim leaned back in his seat. "Yes, a positive, lovely attitude. I don't want it to change. I don't want the blossoms to change you." "The blossoms won't change me," I said. I wanted that to sound certain. It did not. Kim looked down at the magazine. "Oh yes," he said quietly. "You do have a certain sense of yourself, you know." Then he looked up at me again. "So, yes, you won't ever change," he asserted. There was something in his tone I could not read, which was unusual. Kim usually sounded as if every feeling had been lit from beneath by footlights. This was different. For a while neither of us spoke. Outside, the countryside moved past. Grey roof tiles, flat fields, small towns. A child waving at the train from a platform. Then Kim said, almost casually, "I never knew my mum." I looked at him quickly. It sounded rehearsed, yet still sad. "Oh, Kim," I said, "I'm sorry. How sad for you." He shrugged. "I've often wondered what it would be like to really know your mum. I suppose Mama-san has become like a surrogate to me. Even to Taro. She's very nice to us." He gave a small smile when we referred to his handsome boyfriend. "Once she cooked us a nabe. This touched me more than I expected. Mama-san, in a kitchen, cooking something warm, feeding her boys. It did not fit with the figure in the electric blue turban, the sharp eyes, the ringing bell, the frantic pouring of whiskey after a murder. But then perhaps that was the trouble with people. They refused to remain one thing, even when it would be tidier for everyone if they did." "Perhaps we could help Mama-san," I said. Kim turned his head very slowly. "Help with what?" he said in a controlled way. "The investigation," I said. "It might help to sort it all out. It might help Mama-san." "Mama-san never needs help," Kim said. "That should be obvious," he went on. "It isn't obvious to me," I replied. I surprised myself by saying it, and once I had begun, I found I wanted to continue. "We could help. We could investigate, solve the murder, the two of us working together." In saying it, I saw it, a strange little vision of Kim and me striding round Tokyo, not frightened, not hiding, not waiting for someone else to decide our fate. A glamorous pair of homo chic detectives, which was ridiculous, of course, but ridiculousness had never stopped anyone from trying to improve their life. Kim turned a page in his magazine with a snap. He said. I've considered it. And no, he said, looking at the pages. Oh, I don't like the idea, he added. But we might achieve something, I said. It might be fun. That was the wrong word. Fun. About a murder. About the dead boy under the bar. About the fact that I had signed a statement I could not read. A quick glance at Kim's face told me I had misjudged him. His expression had changed. For the first time that day, he looked less like Kim, and more like a stranger wearing Kim's skin very convincingly. I looked down, then out of the window. The vision of us as detectives began to fade. I felt foolish, as usual. But then, underneath that, something firmer stirred in me. Who else would speak for Ming? Who else would speak for the Cherry Blossom Boys? And who else would speak for me if the police had already decided I was the softest target? But it might help, I said. My voice was quiet. Kim shut the magazine. If you don't stop going on about solving the murder, he said, I'll hit you. The sentence landed between us with astonishing precision. For a moment I could not move. I flushed terribly. My eyes went back to the window, though I saw nothing. Only colour, only movement. Only my own face faintly reflected in the glass. Kim sighed, as if he were the one disappointed. Then, in a brighter voice, he said, Not much longer now. No, I said, not much longer. After that, we both worked very hard at pretending nothing awful had passed between us. Society depends upon this talent, which perhaps explains a great deal about society. We spoke of snacks, the speed of the train, the excessive, robotic politeness of the woman with the refreshments trolley. By the time the train pulled into Kyoto station, we had returned to something like almost cheerful chatter, almost, which is sometimes the best one can do. Or Kyoto received us with a different kind of light. Tokyo always seemed lit from machinery, from screens, from signs, from vending machines and trains and rooms where nobody ever slept properly. Kyoto seemed lit from paper lanterns, through paper screens and sliding doors, from water, from clouds passing slowly over tiled roofs. Even the station, large and modern as it was, seemed to stand at the entrance to something older and quieter. I wanted to believe the city could calm me. I wanted to believe that by walking through old streets and temple gates, I might become someone less frightened, someone more capable, someone who did not immediately sign documents he could not read, and who did not need rescuing by whichever glamorous person happened to be nearest. Kim seemed lighter as soon as we arrived. He knew where to go. He knew how to move. He found a taxi, spoke rapidly in Japanese, laughed with the driver, and glanced back at me as if inviting admiration. I gave it. I usually did. We stayed at the small ryokan we had visited before on a school trip, the kind of place where the floor made soft sounds beneath one's feet, and the air smelled faintly of straw mats, tea, and old rain. We sat for some time in our room. It was that in-between time of day when nothing seems quite possible. Too late for beginning, too early for evening. A dead little hour. Kim lay back on the tatami mat and flung one arm over his eyes. Cheer up, Wildol, he said. We must cheer each other up, he added. I looked at him. How? Let's go to that shrine we didn't make it to last time. He lifted his arm and smiled. You know the one, he said. I did know the one. A love shrine on the edge of the mountain. A place I had wanted to visit before, though I had pretended I had not. Love shrines are dangerous places for lonely people. They encourage hope, and hope, in my experience, often behaves irresponsibly. Still, the thought of going out into Kyoto, of walking beneath trees, of doing something tourist-like and ordinary, was suddenly appealing. So I changed into jeans and a t-shirt. Kim changed too, though in his case, changing clothes always seemed to mean becoming more dazzling. But this time, his choices were usually subdued in greys and black. Perhaps it was a silent, elegant acknowledgement of yesterday's sad events. We left the ryokan. On the bus to the shrine, with the movement and sense of going somewhere, we spoke more freely. It helped that few people around us seemed likely to follow our rapid English. The streets of Kyoto passed beyond the glass, small shops, bicycles, the occasional suited businessman using a mobile phone, still a rarity, a glimpse of a temple roof, a river turning silver beneath a bridge. Kim stretched his arm along the back of the seat and pushed up his sleeve to show me his new tattoo. I was surprised I had not noticed it before. Not at the bar, not at his flat, not on the train. It looked too new to have settled into him yet. Dark ink against his skin, still somehow bright with intention. I love it, I said. This was not entirely true, but it seemed the sort of thing one ought to say about a friend's body art. Is it your first? Oh God, no, Kim said. He flexed his bicep. The little kanji stood out darkly on his skin. This one means America, he said. I have another two on my buns. I like getting them. There's a certain satisfaction from a little bit of pain. He gave me a searching look. I laughed because I felt expected to laugh. How lovely, I said. What are they? I inquired. I've a W on each cheek, Kim said, so when I bend over it says wow. He began to laugh. I laughed too. This was easier than thinking. Easier than asking why he had threatened me on the train. Easier than wondering why he had been so eager to leave Tokyo. Then he leaned closer. Why don't you get one that says no entry? I looked down. I could not tell how to take this, so I laughed again. Because apparently that was still my principal method of survival. The bus made a stop near Kiyomizu-dera, and for a moment I remembered visiting it with Chris and Steve in a happier, lighter time. I pictured Steve beside me there, smiling at me warmly, as if we had known each other for years, as if he had been waiting all along for me to become brave enough to look back. I put the thought away quickly. It hurt too much to keep. Kim must have noticed something. Have you made any progress with Steve? He asked. Progress? I asked too quickly. Kim's mouth curved. Yes, doll. Progress, movement, development. Any stirring in the trouser department? I don't know what you mean, I said. This was a lie delivered with very little conviction. I've seen the way you look at him, Kim said. Or actually, the way you do not look at him. I've done no such thing. What, not looked at him? No, yes, I muttered. There seemed no answer to this. Kim watched me with narrowed eyes. Then he softened. People do fall in love, Will. Not with me, I said. The words came out more harshly than I intended. Kim burst into laughter. Then he gave me a quick hug. For a moment, despite everything, I was glad he was there. Then the bus moved on. A line of clouds had appeared over the mountain. It deepened the uneasy feeling I had been trying not to notice. The day was still bright, but something in the light had changed, as if the sun were already considering its departure. When we reached the shrine, Kim grabbed my arm and led me forward. The place was beautiful, more secluded than I had expected. It stood on the lower slopes of the mountain, wrapped in trees and quiet air. A path rose ahead through red torii gates, each one close to the next. A covered walkway of vermilion, a tunnel of old prayers and footstep. Kim set off quickly, looking at this watch. Too quickly. "This reminds me of Napa Valley," he called over his shoulder. "Does it?" I asked. I could not see how. "Don't be a Sally Slow coach, doll," he trilled. "I only want to take it all in," I said. But he was already further ahead. I would have loved to linger, to take photographs, to watch the light move between the gates, to breathe in the scent of wood, earth and incense. But Kim kept walking. And I followed, because that was what I seemed to do with Kim. Follow. "Could we slow down a little?" I asked at last. The forest had grown darker around us. The red gate seemed brighter by contrast. "Of course," Kim said. "In a bit, I just want to take you to the love shrine." His voice rang back from ahead of me, bright, animated, almost too alert. I tried to dismiss the thought. It was a beautiful place. I told myself to be grateful, to be present, to stop making mystery out of every shadow. The trouble with murder is that it makes even stillness seem suspicious, I thought. We climbed higher. The path bent, and at last we reached a small clearing. It opened suddenly in the trees. There were little red shrines, wooden plaques, hanging from frames. Stone foxes watching with narrow, unreadable faces, and from somewhere nearby came the smell of sandalwood incense. Birdsong moved lightly through the branches. A few cherry trees stood at the edge of the clearing, their blossoms bright against the darker forest. The place had an otherworldly calm. It was exactly the sort of atmosphere I loved. Quiet, old, still. Slightly apart from ordinary life, I wished we could simply sit there and say nothing, do nothing, just be. Kim called me over. He held out a wooden plaque with a painted fox's face on it. "Write your love wish on here," he said, as if this were something one did every day. "A love wish?" "Yes, doll," he said briskly. He pressed the plaque into my hand. "And don't write a wish for me," he asserted. I wasn't going to, I thought to myself. "I want you to promise me something," he said. His manner shifted again, less playful, more intent. "I want you to promise you will never worry about me. You know I can look after myself." "I know you can," I said. I laughed and turned slightly away, but he caught my hand. "No, I mean it, Will." He sat on a smooth rock and pulled me gently beside him. A stark shadow fell between us. As I turned, my body shaded him from the sun entirely. For a moment he was quite in the dark, and he looked at me with such strange appeal that I sat down properly beside him. "You are not to worry about me," he said. He patted my hand. "All right," I said, "and I won't worry about you," he added. Then he smiled. I laughed. He laughed too, and the oddness of the moment seemed to pass. He handed me the guidebook, then took his own plaque, wrote something quickly, and wandered towards the edge of the clearing. I watched him go. Then I looked down at my blank wooden plaque. It was harder than I'd expected. Love wishes, it turns out, are dangerous things. They ask you to admit what you want, and there is almost nothing more embarrassing than wanting something clearly. I could not write Steve's name. I was sure he was straight, or nearly straight, or straight enough to make my hope pointless. So I wrote a prayer for the Cherry Blossom Boys instead, for Ming, for Rocky, for all the lonely men who came to the bar because they had nowhere else to be who they were. And perhaps, though I did not write it down, for me too, I hung the plaque with the others. The wind moved them gently. They knocked together with a soft wooden sound, like small patient bells. For a moment I felt calmer. Then I looked around. Kim was gone. At first I told myself not to panic. He had only wandered a little way. He was probably taking a photograph or smoking, or adjusting his hair in some reflective shrine surface unavailable to ordinary mortals. I was perfectly able to look after myself. I often told myself this when evidence suggested otherwise. I approached the wooden frame again. The plaques moved in the breeze. I took a photograph of them. Not because it was necessary, but because taking a photograph is something one can do when one does not know what else to do. It reassures the body that the world is still ordinary, still arranged around harmless tourist actions. I looked around the clearing. There was no one. I was utterly alone. Then my attention was drawn to a lone cherry tree in full bloom. It stood a little way off, perfectly framed by dark fir trees. The flowers were almost too vivid, pink against green-black shadow. For a moment I forgot my worry. It was so beautiful and so complete. I moved around the shrine to take a photograph. A tourist thing, a normal thing. Everyone did such things. Looking through the viewfinder, I zoomed in. Then I froze. There was someone beneath the tree. At first I thought it was a couple. I turned away immediately, embarrassed. "Oh dear," I whispered to myself. Of course I went bright red. Even alone, I managed to be mortified. A truly unnecessary talent. In the space of a moment, the weather changed. The light thinned. High above the forest, a line of cloud moved quickly across the sky. One moment I had been standing in sun. The next, the air was cold. I drew my pea coat around me. The cherry tree blazed suddenly brighter, as if the world had placed all its remaining light there. Then a thin rain began to fall. I looked back at the tree. The couple cuddling beneath it seemed to have gone. Or perhaps there had only been one figure all along. I began to walk towards it. Slowly, I thought I would sit beneath it while waiting for Kim. That was my thought. A calm thought, a practical thought. But with every step, the world became less practical. The rain touched my face and cherry blossoms loosened in the wind and drifted down around the tree. Some fell onto the grass, some onto the dark shape beneath the branches. When I drew close enough to understand what I was seeing, I stopped. For a few seconds, my mind refused it. It could not be Kim. It could not be Kim because Kim was too bright, too loud, too alive, too arranged. He could not simply be lying there motionless under a tree, scattered with fallen petals, still, silent, fragile in a way I'd never imagined him. But it was Kim. I knew him by the shape of his face, by the line of his arm, by the new tattoo on his bicep, the small dark kanji he had shown me on the bus. "America," he had said. I moved stiffly closer. There was a mark on his arm I had not seen before, a new scar, or something that looked like one. And the thought came to me that it would never heal. Not now. That was when I stopped breathing properly. My throat tightened. The air seemed to narrow. I shook. I crouched, not so much sitting as folding, trying to preserve what little air I had left. And for a while there was only the sound of rain and the soft fall of blossoms and my own terrible gasps. Eventually the tightness in my throat began to ease. I wiped my eyes. I made myself stand. The clearing seemed darker now. The dying light was disturbing. Night felt as if it were gathering here first, as if it had chosen this particular place beneath the mountain to begin. I turned away, my mind racing with thoughts of reaching safety. I do not remember deciding to leave, only that I was moving down the path, one foot after another, artificially, as if my body had become a machine operated by a person who had read about walking but never attempted it. The red gates blurred past me. The forest leaned close. At some point I was sick among the trees, and at another I fell over a rock and cut my arm. I noticed the pain only distantly, as if it belonged to someone following me. And was there someone following me? I daren't look round. When I reached the main shrine at the foot of the mountain, busy with people, I burst into tears. I was ashamed of this, which seems absurd now. But shame is very industrious. It will find work even in a crisis. At first, no one knew what to do with me. I wiped my face, tried to speak, tried to gesture, tried to explain a thing that did not want explaining. "Oh," I said in English, "I wish I knew what to do. I would have done anything for a cup of tea. A proper cup of tea. Strong, hot, uncomplicated. A cup of tea that did not ask for bravery or translations." The sun appeared briefly through a break in the cloud. Its rays struck the wet stone and made the world too bright. I had the terrible notion that I might be sick again. My thoughts scattered. How would I ever get back to my flat? How would I explain to anyone? I asked myself, panicking. Why was I thinking about myself when Kim was dead beneath a cherry tree? Selfish, useless. Then everything went strange. For some time I was not conscious of much. I knew I was apologizing several times to people who seemed absurdly tall. This may have been because I was on the ground. I may have been sick again. I may even have tried to cover it with a tissue. I am still not entirely sure. Whatever I was doing, I knew it was pathetic. And yet I could not stop. A severe-looking elderly man in a police uniform leaned over me. "I'm not normally like this," I told him. This was not useful, but it felt important to say as we moved to the local koban or police office. It took an age to explain anything. I used gestures, English, a little Japanese, the photograph, more gestures, but whatever I tried, I could not quite make myself show the simple fact of a dead body beneath a tree. Eventually a pale, slim woman arrived. She said she was from the tourist information office. She looked so perfect and composed that I immediately wished I had something less dreadful to tell her. After some time, someone gave me green tea. It was in a very small cup, and it was weak, but it was warm. And that was enough to bring me back into myself a little. The rain continued outside, softly, steadily, as if nothing unusual had happened. I felt a sudden pang of homesickness, so sharp it seemed to come from my bones. I wished I had never come to Japan. I wished I were safe and quiet at home. I wished even more shamefully that I could simply leave. Say I had fallen over, say I had been a silly, say I had come over unnecessary in the manner gays sometimes do in unhelpful old fiction, but I knew that was not possible, not even in Japan, and I knew there was no way to stop the familiar, hollow feeling of despair sweeping over me. Not for a moment. For the first time I came to know that grief is not dramatic in the way novels sometimes suggest. It is not all moonlit windows and solemn tears. It is not elegant. It is not even especially interesting to the person experiencing it. It is a horrid, sick-making loneliness, a weight in the stomach, a tiredness behind the eyes, a sense that one has been abandoned in a room where nothing can be repaired. I sat alone in a bare hotel room with no allies, nothing real, nothing to do that could help. The police had asked questions, or tried to ask questions. I had answered badly, or tried to answer. My Japanese became worse the more frightened I became. I wished Chris were there. I wished beyond hope that he might burst through the door with some absurd remark, or a feather boa, or a little bell, or simply tea. Only hours before I could have spoken to Kim, but Kim was now simply gone, And what was worse, I was not sure I would have confided in him anyway. That was a dreadful realization. It is quite dreadful to realize you barely liked someone who is now dead. Not that I hated him, I did not. Kim had been kind to me, in his way. He had brought me into the cherry blossoms. He had made Tokyo seem more possible. He had guided me, dressed me, corrected me, and entertained me, praised me, and sometimes made me feel chosen. But there had always been something too bright in him, too forceful, too consuming. He took up space in a way I both admired and resented. And now that he was gone, I could not make my feelings simple enough for grief. Kim's death did not seem like him at all. He was too purposeful to die like that. Dishevelled, outside, unplanned. I had imagined Kim would die one day with elegance, slowly, in a carefully arranged room, surrounded by distraught mourners and excellent lighting, or perhaps in some thrilling crime of passion, but not alone beneath a tree, not hidden by blossoms, not found by me. The room was very quiet. Outside, Kyoto continued in its old, indifferent way. Somewhere a bell sounded. A door slid closed in the corridor. A woman laughed softly far below. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands. There was still a faint scratch on my arm from where I had fallen. Someone had cleaned it. Someone had put a plaster over it. This small act of care almost undid me. I had the strange thought that if one small wound could be cleaned, improved, restored, why not the rest of life? A foolish thought. The next morning, Taro arrived. Taro was Kim's impossibly handsome boyfriend, a man I had only shyly glimpsed and said hello to in the past. Someone I had admired from a safe distance, which is to say, from the distance at which I could still pretend I was not admiring him at all. I opened the door and found him standing there in a black suit. It fitted him beautifully, of course it did. It made his shoulders seem broader, his hips narrower, his face darker and more serious than I remembered. I was too startled to speak. For a moment all I could do was gesture for him to enter. "I'm sorry, Will," he said. His voice was disarmingly frank. "No," I began. "I'm sorry," I insisted. I wanted to apologize for everything, for not staying with Kim, for losing him, for not understanding what was happening, for being useless in yet another crisis. But Taro silenced me with a small, elegant gesture. He sat down with his back partly turned to me. I remained standing. I did not know whether to comfort him with words, or touch, or neither. "It's really very good of you to come all this way," I murmured. There was no answer at first. I thought perhaps he was crying silently. Holding things in never works. I can see that quite clearly in other people. "I must," he said sharply. Then he put his hand on mine. I fought the instinct to snatch it back. "I loved him," Taro said. It sounded helpless, more than explanatory. "I know," I said. It was all I could manage, but it seemed enough. "I never knew a man like him," Taro continued. "Like him, you see, I can't see life without him, like a nightmare." Then he began to cry audibly. The sound was more theatrical than I expected. There is something particularly awful about a man crying, perhaps because we are all trained so stupidly not to do it. A fine system society has made. Everyone suffers. His sobs grew louder, his head bowed, then moving automatically as if some human instinct took over in me. I found his shaking head against my hand as he wept. I remained standing behind him. Awkward, moved, useless. "Don't cry," I whispered. He stopped abruptly, which made me feel immediately dreadful. "Oh, you must if you want to," I added quickly, but by then he seemed to have improved remarkably. I could not tell whether I had helped him or interrupted him, or whether grief, like everything else around me, had become something I could not read properly. I went into the bathroom and washed my face in cold water. In the mirror I looked younger than 22, or perhaps simply more frightened. I wanted Chris, I wanted England, I wanted the last few days to fold themselves away and become nothing more than a strange story, told years later over tea. But when I returned to the room, Taro was composed. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. "We should return to Tokyo," he said. I nodded, because I had no idea what else to do. Later that day, on the bullet train, Taro and I sat side by side. The movement of the train was smooth, almost too smooth, as if Japan had decided that if tragedy must occur, at least transport would remain efficient. A trolley passed. We bought bentos. We ate because it was lunchtime, and because eating ordinary meals is one of the ways people pretend the world is still intact. Rice, pickles, fish, a folded napkin, tiny chopsticks, all the little arrangements of normal Japanese life. Taro looked forward as he spoke. "Did the police ask questions?" "A few," I said. I wanted to help, but I could not explain what had happened clearly, even to myself. "Did you tell them about Kim?" "They only asked about me, really." He turned to me. "Please don't tell them." I looked at him. "I'm not sure." I trailed off. A lettuce leaf slipped from my chopstick and landed in the tray. This seemed disproportionately upsetting. "If you tell them the truth," Taro said, "they will not look for the killer." "Oh," I said. "That..." I understood then what he meant. Kim being gay, Kim being a host, Kim belonging to the hidden world beneath the ordinary one. "Of course, I didn't tell the police Kim was gay," I said. A lifetime of being gay had given me at least that much resolve. Society makes lying second nature to every gay. I thought this with a macabre sense of grandeur, which was perhaps unnecessary. But one must take drama where one can find it. "You are a wonderful English gentleman," Taro said unexpectedly. His impressive brown eyes met mine. Then his hand touched mine beneath the little drop-down table. The touch was small, but not accidental. I did not move away, but I did avert my gaze. "What about the funeral?" I asked suddenly. "The funeral," Taro repeated, as if it were a foreign word, which of course it was. He seemed to search for a reply. "I don't know," he said at last. Then, after a pause, "Ah, I remember now. It is in America," he offered. He looked away. This seemed right, I thought, or right enough, though I had no idea how it had been organised. But Taro seemed a ruthlessly efficient sort of man. "Can I send flowers?" I asked. "Why?" "It's tradition," I said. "It's gracious," I added. I didn't know why everything seemed to need explaining. I longed to be understood by someone. Not admired and not managed, not guided, just understood. More than anything, I wanted to be alone, even when I had Taro's brown eyes beside me. I wanted to be alone and very quiet. Kyoto already seemed far behind us. My little flat in Tokyo seemed far away too. England further still. Taro stirred cream into his coffee. "I will write the address," he said. Then, without pause, "They will question you again. They will suspect you. Already they want your passport. Do you have it?" He said, holding out a hand. A coldness went through me. I looked away. At the far end of the carriage, a policeman stood by the door. He was squat, expressionless, ordinary, which made him all the more frightening. Something inside me seemed to give way. My mind did not collapse exactly, but it bent. I took my passport from my pocket and placed it on the little table between us. For a moment I looked at it, burgundy, familiar, official. A small object that suddenly seemed to contain my whole life. Taro picked it up. He handed it to the policeman, and the policeman took it without ceremony and went back into the next carriage. That was all. No speech, no receipt signed in triplicate, no moment of thunder, just my passport disappearing from my possession into someone else's hand. I felt terribly hot, then icy cold. Taro looked at me. "It is better," he said. "Better?" I asked. "For now," he said, with an air of finality, and looked away. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to ask who had told him. I wanted to ask whether I could leave Japan, whether I would be arrested, whether everyone around me had known more than I did from the beginning, but I asked none of these things. I sat very still. Outside the window, the last of the cherry trees rushed past. They looked different now. Not hopeful, not alive, but pale and fleeting and impossible to hold. Eventually, Taro's hand found mine again. "You must not be alone tonight," he said. The words were kind, or seemed kind, and kindness at that moment was difficult to refuse. I looked out of the train window, at the town slipping past, at the grey roofs, at the wet fields, at the spring light fading slowly into evening. I thought of Kim beneath the cherry tree. I thought of Ming behind the beaded curtain. I thought of Mama-san ringing the bell for last orders. I thought of the young policeman telling me I was a suspect. And I thought of Steve at the temple in Tokyo, head bent in prayer, turning towards me, looking at me as if some other life might still be possible. The train carried us on, back towards Tokyo, back towards the bar, back towards everything I had tried foolishly to escape. I had gone to Kyoto to leave the mystery behind. Instead, it had followed me there. It had enveloped, swallowed me deeper. Or perhaps I had carried it with me all along. This has been episode 4 of the Cherry Blossom Murders, Mystery at the Kyoto Temple. An original sleep story about love, mystery, and self-growth in 1990s Japan. Narrated in the author's own voice. Thank you for listening. Tonight, Will left Tokyo with Kim. They travelled south through spring countryside, past cherry trees opening beside the railway line, and into Kyoto, a city of temples, mountain paths, red gates, and old quiet. But the peace Kim promised did not last. At the love shrine, beneath the trees, Kim urged Will not to worry about him. Then disappeared from the clearing, and beneath a cherry tree in bloom, Will found him still and silent among the falling petals. The police came. The night passed in a bare hotel room. And the next morning, Taro arrived, Kim's impossibly handsome boyfriend, grieving, composed, and already beginning to guide Will back towards Tokyo. But as the train carried them north again, Will's passport was taken. The questions around him deepened, and the mystery that began in the mirrored basement of the cherry blossoms followed him out of Kyoto and back into the city. In the next episode, Will returns to Tokyo shaken. Chris prepares to leave for Koya-san. Handsome Taro offers comfort of a kind Will does not yet understand. And Will begins to see that grief, desire, and danger can become dangerously difficult to tell apart. Before you drift away, please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the story. And if you have any questions, thoughts, theories, or favourite moments, please leave them in the comments. I love reading your comments, and I love interacting with listeners as the story unfolds. Your comments help other people find these original mystery sleep stories, and they help build our little world around the cherry blossom murders too. But for now, let the train move gently through the dark. Let the city lights grow distant. Let the cherry blossoms fall softly in the mountain rain, and let Kyoto fade slowly into sleep. Until next time, rest well.